welcome back to the channel, guys. Last Bread is back in the building, and I'm going to talk about Jose Aldo versus Rob Font this weekend coming up. I'm quite interested in this fight because I think a lot of people are favouring Rob Font because he's sort of the fresh contender, but I think the betting odds are quite even, and I think there's a good reason for that. And it's because Jose Aldo, despite a lot of people saying he's past his prime, has actually adapted very, very well to this weight class, and he's still able to stand and train with the best of them. Like, you could argue that out of the fights that Peter Yan's had, Aldo was the most competitive. He might have got finished at the end of it, but he looked really, really good against Peter Yan early. Now, I'm not saying he would win a rematch or that Aldo is going to become the champion at bantamweight or nothing like that, but I think he can still compete with pretty much the best of the best in that division. Now, Rob Font's never been finished, so I don't think Aldo's going to straight up obliterate him. But I think a lot of people are seeing the Font versus Garbrandt fight, and they're sort of forming this opinion of Rob Font. And I don't think it's necessarily what people think it is. Now, don't get me wrong, Rob Font's a very solid fighter, hard to finish, great pace, good wrestling, solid striking, good reach, very good reach for the division. So I'm not saying he's not legitimate, but I think there's a few things that we need to talk about in terms of his last fight. The reality is, Cody Garbrandt, now, there's a few different ways to look at Cody Garbrandt. He obviously burst onto the scene against Dominic Cruz after fighting relative unknowns and knocking them all out. He burst onto the scene and put on an absolutely amazing performance against Dom Cruz. Like he did, but this was years ago now. Like, he put on an amazing performance, he outboxed him, he didn't allow Cruz to get his game going, he out-wrestled him, outstruck him, it was too fast for him, used great footwork. Now, the problem is, this is a long time ago, and he's never reproduced a performance that was that good since. Never. And it doesn't matter what anyone says, like, even against Rafael Sunsao, where he scored that knockout, it wasn't the same level of performance. It wasn't. So you've got to sort of look at that and go, well, why is that? And is it that Dom Cruz was past it? I don't like to think so. I think Dom Cruz has still got a unique style that's tough for anyone. But I think it might have been more of an anomaly on the part of Cody Garbrandt. It might have been just one of those Buster Douglas things where the clouds just kind of aligned for him. And I think it was kind of an anomalous result. And that's not to say Garbrandt isn't talented, he obviously is. But you look at the way that he performed against Rob Font, he was backed up easily, he got tired very quickly, his punches didn't have the same snap after about the first or second round. He didn't look as good. Like, he still looked to have decent wrestling and fast hands, but his fight IQ wasn't really there. He didn't know how to get around the jab or the reach of Rob Font. Like, he didn't seem to know how to deal with it. And I don't believe that's the guy that we think we saw against Dom Cruz. So I think there's a possibility that injuries and COVID, because he did have quite a bad bout of COVID, I think those things have potentially slowed Garbrandt down, or on the flip side, it might have been an anomaly. But I don't think that because Rob Font walked through Cody Garbrandt for 5 rounds like that, I don't think that means he can do the same thing to Jose Aldo. First of all, Jose Aldo's striking is on a different level to Cody Garbrandt's, like in terms of the amount of weapons that he's got. I think he's still very explosive and he's got a lot of speed in the same way that Garbrandt does, but he's much better defensively. He's probably got better takedown defense, even though Garbrandt was an amateur wrestler. Like, Aldo's takedown defense is second to none. So I do actually think Aldo is going to get this win over Rob Font. Now, it's not going to be easy, but I think Aldo will probably win the first few rounds. Like, he'll probably win the first 2 rounds. Rob Font might get a little bit better in the 3rd and 4th, and then Rob Font will probably be dominating by the 5th round. But I think Aldo's going to do enough in those early rounds to secure the points victory. I think he'll win. It might even be a split decision, but I do think Aldo's going to get it done, just because I don't think Rob Font's striking level is there with Aldo's, and I don't think he can dominate him in any department. I don't think, like, he might have a good pace, but Aldo won't back up in the way that Garbrandt did. He's just going to stand there and trade with Rob Font, and he's going to start throwing those, I think he will start throwing those leg kicks in this fight, and that will slow Rob Font down a bit, at least temporarily. And then I think Aldo will land some good shots, good combinations in rounds 1, 2 and 3. He probably is going to slow down a bit, but I think he's getting good at pacing himself so that decline that he has towards the end of the fight doesn't affect him quite as badly as it otherwise would have done, like it did in the Peter Yan fight. I think he's got a little bit better at that, and I think Aldo will be able to slow the pace enough to where Rob Font can't just take over. So I do actually think Aldo's going to come out victorious. I think it will be a decision. I think it's going to be a hard fight, but I think Aldo is going to win this one by either a split or unanimous decision. As always, please let me know what you think. Link to my Patreon page is in the description below. You don't have to give anything, but anything you do give would be massively appreciated. As always, please like the video, subscribe to the channel, and let me know what you think about this fight in the comment section. Thank you.